Hello students, mabuhay! Get ready to delve into the fascinating world of cell biology today. Now, what is cell biology? Cell biology is also known as cytology. It is a branch of biology that focuses on the study of cells. Now, cells is the fundamental structural and functional units of all living organisms. Cytology explores the various processes, mechanisms that occur within the cell, including their structure, organization, reproduction, metabolism, communication, and interaction with their environment. Cell biology plays a pivotal role in understanding the fundamental principles of life and is important for advancing our knowledge in areas such as genetics, physiology, developmental biology, and medicine. At the end of this lesson, you will explain the postulates of the cell theory. You will also describe the structure and function of major and subcellular organelles. You will also distinguish prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells according to their features. And lastly, you will classify different cell types of plant and animal tissues, as well as to specify the function of each types. So for our first lesson, we will explain the postulates of cell theory. The cell theory is a fundamental concept in cell biology. It will help us understand the nature of living organisms. So we have three tenets of cell theory. Everybody read. All living organisms are composed of one or more cells. This tenet asserts that all living things, regardless of their complexity, regardless of their size, they are made up of cells. The cells are the smallest structural and functional units of life. Whether an organism is a single-celled microorganism like bacteria or a complex molecular organism like human beings or humans, it is ultimately comprised of cell. So this tenet number 1 highlights the universality of cells as the building blocks of life. Okay? Everybody read number 2. The cell is the basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. Now, this tenet emphasizes the central role, the role of the cell in the structure and organization of living organisms. Cells are not just random components. They are fundamental units that organize themselves from cells into tissues, tissues to organs, organs to organ system, and to the whole organism. Every function from digestion to respiration can be traced back to the activities and interactions of cells. This principle highlights the hierarchical organization of living organisms, which cells as the foundational level, pundasyon. Okay? Everybody read the last tenet. Cells come from pre-existing cells. So it proposes that new cells are produced through the division of pre-existing cells. In other words, cells do not spontaneously generate from non-living things. They arise from pre-existing cells through the process of cell division, where a parent cell gives rise to two or more daughter cells. So this concept is known as biogenesis. It is a significant departure from the earlier idea of spontaneous generation, which life could arise from non-living materials. So the principle of cells coming from pre-existing cells underscores the continuity of life and is crucial aspect for reproduction and repair of living organisms. So together, these three postulates or three tenets of cell theory provide a comprehensive framework for understanding the fundamental nature of life and the pivotal role that the cells play in all living organisms, from the simplest microorganisms to the most complex multicellular organisms. So now, let us view a video about cell theory and the development of cell biology.
One of the great things about science is that when scientists make a discovery, it's not always in a prescribed manner, as in only in a laboratory under strict settings with white lab coats and all sorts of neat science gizmos that go beep. In reality, the events and people involved in some of the major scientific discoveries are as weird and varied as they get. My case in point, the weird history of the cell theory. There are three parts to the cell theory. 1. All organisms are composed of one or more cells. 2. The cell is the basic unit of structure and organization in organisms. And 3. All cells come from pre-existing cells. To be honest, this all sounds incredibly boring until you dig a little deeper into how the world of microscopic organisms and this theory came to be. It all started in the early 1600s in the Netherlands, where a spectacle maker named Zacharias Janssen is said to have come up with the first compound microscope, along with the first telescope. Both claims are often disputed, as apparently he wasn't the only bored guy with a ton of glass lenses to play with at the time. Despite this, the microscope soon became a hot item that every naturalist or scientist at the time wanted to play with, making it much like the iPad of its day. One such person was a fellow Dutchman by the name of Anton van Leeuwenhoek, who heard about these microscope doohickeys, and instead of going out and buying one, he decided to make his own. And it was a strange little contraption indeed, as it looked more like a tiny paddle the size of a sunglass lens. If he had stuck two together, it probably would have made a wicked set of sunglasses that you couldn't see much out of. Anywho, once Leeuwenhoek had his microscope ready, he went to town looking at anything and everything he could with them, including the gunk on his teeth. Yes, you heard right. He actually discovered bacteria by looking at dental scrapings, which, when you keep in mind that people didn't brush their teeth much, if at all, back then, he must have had a lovely bunch of bacteria to look at. When he wrote about his discovery, he didn't call them bacteria as we know them today, but he called them animalcules because they looked like little animals to him. While Leeuwenhoek was staring at his teeth gunk, He was also sending letters to a scientific colleague in England by the name of Robert Hooke. Hooke was a guy who really loved all aspects of science, so he dabbled in a little bit of everything, including physics, chemistry, and biology. Thus it is Hooke who we can thank for the term the cell, as he was looking at a piece of cork under his microscope, and the little chambers he saw reminded him of cells, or the rooms monks slept in their monasteries. Think college dorm rooms, but without the TVs, computers, and really annoying roommates. Hooke was something of an underappreciated scientist of his day, something he brought upon himself as he made the mistake of locking horns with one of the most famous scientists ever, Sir Isaac Newton. Remember when I said Hooke dabbled in many different fields? Well, after Newton published a groundbreaking book on how planets move due to gravity, Hooke made the claim that Newton had been inspired by Hooke's work in physics. Newton, to say the least, did not like that, which sparked a tense relationship between the two that lasted even after Hooke died, as quite a bit of Hooke's research, as well as his only portrait, was misplaced due to Newton. Much of it was rediscovered, thankfully, after Newton's time, but not his portrait, as sadly no one knows what Robert Hooke looked like. Fast forward to the 1800s, where two German scientists discovered something that today we might find rather obvious, but helped tie together what we now know as the cell theory. The first scientist was Matthias Schleiden, a botanist who liked to study plants under a microscope. From his years of studying different plant species, it finally dawned on him that every single plant he had looked at were all made of cells. At the same time, on the other end of Germany was Theodor Schwann, a scientist who not only studied slides of animal cells under the microscope and got a special type of nerve cell named after him, but also invented rebreathers for firefighters and had a kickin' pair of sideburns. After studying animal cells for a while, he too came to the conclusion that all animals were made of cells. Immediately, he reached out via snail mail, as Twitter had yet to be invented, to other scientists working in the same field, and it was Schleiden who got back to him, and the two started working on the beginnings of the cell theory. A bone of contention arose between them, as for the last part of the cell theory, that cells come from pre-existing cells, Schleiden didn't exactly subscribe to that thought, as he swore cells came from free cell formation, where they just kind of spontaneously crystallized into existence. That's when another scientist, named Rudolf Virchow, stepped in with research showing that cells did come from other cells. Research that was actually, how to put it, borrowed without permission from a Jewish scientist by the name of Robert Remak, which led to two more feuding scientists. Thus, from teeth gunk to torquing off Newton, crystallization to Schwann cells, the cell theory came to be an important part of biology today. Some things we know about science today may seem boring, but how we came to know them is incredibly fascinating. So if something bores you, dig deeper. It's probably got a really weird story behind it somewhere.
Okay, so that is the video on how the three postulates of cell theory developed over time with the persons or the scientists involved in its development. So now we will proceed to our next topic. We will now unravel the structures and functions of major and subcellular organelles. So organelles, what are organelles? Organelles are specialized membrane-bound structures within eukaryotic cells that perform specific functions necessary for the cell's survival, growth, and maintenance. So here we have two illustrations of cell. This is the plant cell and this one is the animal cell. Eukaryotic cells are a type of cell that has a distinct nucleus enclosed within a membrane And within these cells, organelles are the functional components that carry out various tasks. So here are some of the organelles found in eukaryotic cells. So we have nucleus. What is the function of nucleus? It is often referred to as the control center of the cell. It contains genetic material in a form of DNA, which regulates the cell activities and stores the instructions for making proteins. So here is the nucleus. Next, we have the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. It is responsible for generating ATP or adenosine triphosphate, the cell's primary energy source through cellular respiration. Next, we have the endoplasmic reticulum. So this is the rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. It is a network of membranes involved in protein and lipid synthesis. It can be rough with ribosomes or smooth without ribosomes. And each type has distinct functions. Now we have ribosomes. This one, attached and unattached. Can be attached, can be unattached. These are small, non-membrane bound organelles that are involved in protein synthesis. They can be found free in the cytoplasm or attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Next, we have the Golgi apparatus or Golgi bodies. It processes, modifies, and packages proteins and lipids produced by the endoplasmic reticulum for transport to the final destinations within or outside the cell. Next, we have the lysosomes. Where can we find the lysosomes? Can be where? Lysosomes. Kindly locate where is the lysosome. So what is the function of the lysosome? It contains enzymes that break down cellular waste, old organelles, and foreign substances through the process known as autophagy. So they are the cell's clean-up crew, the janitors of the cell. Next, we have peroxisome, involved in the breakdown of fatty acids and detoxification process within the cell. We also have vacuoles. This one. Vacuoles are large membrane-bound sacs that stores substances such as water, nutrients, and waste products. They are more prominent or bigger in plant cells but can also be found in some animal cells, smaller in size. Next, we have chloroplasts. They are found only in plant cells and some protists. They are responsible for photosynthesis. They convert sunlight into chemical energy and produce glucose. Next, we have the cytoskeleton. They are not organelles in the traditional sense. The components of cytoskeleton, such as microtubules and microfilaments, provide structural support to the cell and are involved in the cell movement and transport of materials. So, look at their structure. Para silang mga tubes. Okay? So, these organelles work together in a highly coordinated manner to ensure the proper functioning of the cell. So, each organelle has a specific role in maintaining cellular homeostasis. What is that? Balance. carrying out metabolic processes and facilitating communication within the cell and with the external environment. So the presence and arrangement of organelles can vary among different types of eukaryotic cells to suit their specific functions and requirement. So now we will have the table showing the summary of the functions of different organisms. So these organelles, they are grouped into 4. The genetic control, we have nucleus and ribosomes. For manufacturing, distribution, and breakdown, we have rough ER, smooth ER, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, vacuoles, and peroxisomes. While for the energy processing, we have mitochondria and chloroplast. For the structural support, movement, and communication between cells, we have the cytoskeleton, plasma membrane, extracellular matrix, cell junctions, and the cell wall. Let us now view a video about the different organelles.
Cells are the smallest living units of an organism. All cells have 3 things in common, no matter what type of cell they are. All cells have a cell membrane, which separates the inside of the cell from its environment, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like fluid, and DNA, which is the cell's genetic material. There are 2 broad categories of cells. The first category is eukaryotic cells. They have organelles, which include the nucleus and other special parts. Eukaryotic cells are more advanced, complex cells, such as those found in plants and animals. The second category is prokaryotic cells. They don't have a nucleus or membrane-enclosed organelles. They do have genetic material, but it's not contained within a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are always one-celled or unicellular organisms, such as bacteria. So, what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are the specialized parts of a cell that have unique jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled, spread-out form of DNA found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. The nucleus also contains a nucleolus, which is a structure where ribosomes are made. After ribosomes leave the nucleus, they will have the important job of synthesizing or making proteins. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles float around in cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes may wander freely within the cytoplasm or attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, sometimes abbreviated as ER. There are 2 types of ER. Rough ER has ribosomes attached to it, and smooth ER doesn't have ribosomes attached to it. The endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane-enclosed passageway for transporting materials, such as the proteins synthesized by ribosomes. Proteins and other materials emerge from the endoplasmic reticulum in small vesicles, where the Golgi apparatus, sometimes called the Golgi body, receives them. As proteins move through the Golgi body, they're customized into forms that the cell can use. The Golgi body does this by folding the proteins into usable shapes, or adding other materials onto them, such as lipids or carbohydrates. Vacuoles are sac-like structures that store different materials. Here, in this plant cell, the central vacuole stores water. Going back to the animal cell, you will see an organelle called a lysosome. Lysosomes are the garbage collectors that take in damaged or worn-out cell parts. They are filled with enzymes that break down this cellular debris. The mitochondrion is an organelle that is the powerhouse for both animal and plant cells. During a process called cellular respiration, the mitochondria make ATP molecules that provide the energy for all of the cell's activities. Cells that need more energy have more mitochondria. Meanwhile, the cell maintains its shape through a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton includes the thread-like microfilaments, which are made of protein, and microtubules, which are thin, hollow tubes. Some organisms, such as plants, that are photoautotrophic, meaning they capture sunlight for energy, have cells with an organelle called a chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens. It's green because it has a green pigment called chlorophyll. Plant cells also have a cell wall outside of their cell membranes that shape, support, and protect the plant cell. Animal cells never have a cell wall. There are many other unique structures that only some cells have. Here are just a few. In humans, for example, the respiratory tract is lined with cells that have cilia. These are microscopic hair-like projections that can move in waves. This feature helps trap inhaled particles in the air and expels them when you cough. Another unique feature in some cells is flagella. Some bacteria have flagella. A flagellum is like a little tail that can help a cell move or propel itself. The only human cell that has a flagellum is a sperm cell. In summary, remember, eukaryotic cells are plant and animal cells with a nucleus and membrane-enclosed organelles, while prokaryotic cells are unicellular organisms without these things. All cells have a cell membrane, cytoplasm, and genetic material. And even though only plant cells have chloroplasts, both plant and animal cells have mitochondria.
And that ends our lesson on the 3 postulates of cell theory and the different plant and animal organelles. Goodbye, class.